Went to the pool, took a shot, threw it on. Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, what is up, PhinManiacs listeners? Thank you so much for tuning in onto our very first Scouting Combine live stream. Last week, it was a taping with Clay Ferraro, and we were up in Blacksburg, Virginia, talking about Virginia Tech. But now we're down south with Virginia Tech's somewhat kind of rival down here in Coral Gables with the Miami Hurricanes. And we have special guests, Will Manso and Will. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. It's good to be on.
It's great to have you back. And, let's dig right into it. It wasn't amazing, but this Hurricanes offense was much better after closing out the 2019 seasons. And, they lost in a bowl game to Louisiana Tech. Having quarterback D'Eriq King really helped, but there wasn't really any, consistency in an offensive attack. They really sputtered towards the end. Now, in a conference full of basically what is Clemson and USC, there's nobody else. But the Canes were stuffed by Clemson, and they got absolutely destroyed by the Tar Heels. So what's going to be that spark that needs to work for King and this offense?
Well, I mean, you said it with King, and I think you talk to anyone at camp out in Coral Gables, and you talk to Manny Diaz, and the first words that come out of their mouth are D'Eriq King. And having him back, having him as your leader, having him as your playmaker, with a year under his belt in a system. It's very rare in college football. A lot of times these quarterbacks don't get the comfort of the same offensive coordinator and the same offense and learning the system. D'Eriq King had that. He had that under his belt. We know how dynamic of a player he is. Obviously, it's going to be down to playmakers that he has and who steps up from that, having a veteran like Harley, having a three-headed attack at running back. Hopefully the offensive line protects. But when you look at it, it starts and ends with D'Eriq King. He has to be healthy. He has to be productive. He has to be a superstar, which he's labeled as entering the season in college football for the Canes offense to reach their potential.
So I know we know he really signed a lot of NIL deals. And, if it doesn't work out for him in the NFL, I think he could become like a marketing CEO or some type of business guru that will make a name for himself in this industry. But, speaking of big names, Miami lost a lot of talent in last year's NFL draft. And key target tight end, Brevin Jordan, he's gone. But you got 6'5", 245-pound junior Will Mallory. And, Hurricanes, they're always churning out tight ends. The top wideouts are back, starting with Mike Harley and Mark Pope and D. Wiggins, although Wiggins needs to he needs to improve from last season. So you got big plate talent and emerging talent who are coming in. And you also get Charleston Rambo, the transfer from Oklahoma. So that'll help with the big play. And I think Rhett Lashley will use him really, really well. So it's looking like King will have a better season. But what happens if he doesn't live up to those expectations?
Well, if he doesn't, they're going to win. They're not going to win as many games as they did last year. This is going to be what they go 8-3 last year. Or this is the team that they need D'Eriq King to be like a star in just about every game. And I know we're going to talk about the defense shortly. And obviously, Miami getting back to the Miami defense is important. But you mentioned it earlier, in a conference where you have Clemson and North Carolina. North Carolina's got a sensational QB in Sam Howell, and they've got an explosive offense. You got to score points. You can't win games in this conference against those teams 20-17, grind it out, play defense, kick a field goal late. You got to score 30-plus points, maybe 40 points consistently. And that's just something that will fall on D'Eriq King's shoulders. So to answer your question, if he doesn't play to that potential, they're not going to win a lot of games, or certainly not to what they would expect. And that's okay. D'Eriq understands that. That young man, the one thing about him is we talk so much about him as a player, but everyone you talk to him as a person and a leader, he's fine with the expectations. He's fine with the pressure. He's fine with being the guy that has to lead because he believes he is a leader. And it really starts and ends with him when it comes to that offense.
And that's what makes him a bona fide superstar down here in Coral Gables, and especially here in Miami. We haven't seen a quarterback with his enigma, his charisma, his play style. Who was the last one? Because remind me, I wasn't even born in the early 90s, Will.
You're talking about as far as quarterbacks go. Ja'Cory Harris. Had that one or two big years. Ja'Cory, we think back to those days, and it's funny how it's changed from the days of Gino Torretta and Vinny Testaverde and Steve Walsh and those kind of quarterbacks to the inconsistency you've seen at that position. Miami was quarterback you. Miami was the place where the quarterbacks were stars, and we didn't see that. And obviously, Ken Dorsey had his time where he was phenomenal. But since those days of Dorsey, you've had guys, you go through the list of guys that have come through that you hope might be special players, and a lot of them haven't panned out. They just haven't. It's just not, it just hasn't worked out. But De'Aaron is the best quarterbacks Miami's had since those days, since Ken Dorsey, when it comes to consistency and playmaking. Look, he did it at Houston. It's not like some guy that came out of high school, you didn't know who he was. He did it at college level, at a high level. He is considered one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he's earned that. He's absolutely earned that. So to have him for one more year, the Canes have to take advantage. There's no, I know everybody always jokes about when's Miami back and when are they back and this and that. And I know they got their young quarterback Garcia, who they like a lot for the future potentially. But to have a guy like De'Aaron King, they don't come across and along very often. And you got to take advantage of the year that you have him now, hopefully healthy and productive.
And with any offense, you need to have a great offensive line. Now, Zion Nelson is an offensive lineman to keep an eye on, and he could possibly be a top 15, top 20, top 25 pick. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He's going to be a great player, but he knows that he needs to protect De'Aaron King and hold him upright. But he also needs to help open up the running lanes in the ground game. Mm-hmm. Now, it isn't a deep group of running backs, but, they have a great committee. They have 3 of them who should be a great rotation. So let's talk about this.
I like all those guys.
You like all those guys? All right, let's speak about all of them.
Chaney, Cam. I mean, to me, they are. I think that they can be one of the deeper units in the country. While they may not.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because they all do different things, and you have Cam brings the experience, and you look at Chaney as the guy who's probably going to be your lead guy a lot of the time with his production. You're talking about 2 young guys who were 2 of the most productive players in Dayton, Broward County 2 years ago that came in as freshmen and showed a lot of signs. The Rooster, Knighton's a kid who could just take it and go. And that's what you need. As much as we talk about De'Aaron, and again, he is the key to the offense, you have to have the offensive line protected. You need that help where on one play, we haven't seen it as much. We started to see a little last year where a running back just gets it and goes. And the Canes, to score 35, 40 points in a game and 45 points like we talked about earlier, it can't be grind them out 10, 12 play drives all the time. You need home run hitters. And I think the guys they have on offense in the ground attack can be home run hitters in a combination. You're not going to have the one guy all the time, but that's okay. College football, every team and the good teams tend to have 2, 3 guys. I think the Canes have 3 quality running backs that can get the job done.
And they can all get home if they need to. They're all big play home run threats as well. But again, it is going to be up to that offensive line. Now let's go ahead and switch to the defense. Now, the defensive line never had Greg Rousseau last year, but we saw him in the first week absolutely plow by Penei Sewell, who is one of the highly regarded offensive linemen as well. They're without Jalen Phillips, who's now with the Miami Dolphins. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. And Quincy Roche has been drafted to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mm-hmm. Now, all of them, they combine for 12.5 sacks and 30 tackles for losses, basically. They're big shoes to fill. So who are these newbies coming in for the Hurricanes?
Well, I mean, you have newbies, but you have oldies. I mean, you got Zach McLeod, who's played about every position now, and he's going to be counted on as a leader and on that line. And, we laugh and we joke about Zach because it feels like he's been there 8-9 years. But
he's a proven veteran.
He is, which you rarely get. You want to talk about De'Aaron King being a proven veteran. I mean, they don't get more of a vet than Zach McLeod. I think he brings some leadership and obviously ability. They like what they saw there at the end of last year, and then throughout camp, they feel like Zach can play on the line. And they feel like he can be a guy who can create things on the edge. Jafari Harvey is a guy that had the opportunity to play, and you hope again that he's a guy that grows. I also love what they have. A lot of times we lose sight. We always think of edge guys. But one thing that Greg did well, and I know he didn't play last year, but he could play inside. And the Canes went out and got themselves a young beast in Leonard Taylor inside that you hope you can play. You got John Ford, a guy coming back. You got Nessa Silvera, who's a huge dude in the middle.
Oh, man. I think he might be a second-round talent this year if he plays up to expectations.
These are guys with NFL upside that while they're not necessarily like, Jalen ended up being on paper the best edge guy in the draft, certainly as far as draft position goes. They don't have that guy like that, but they have a steady amount of guys that I think that can create pressure. and can especially attack the middle, which we saw Rousseau do, a couple of years ago. A lot of his sacks came inside, and it wasn't just like he was on the outside doing things like that. And look, one of the key factors that we haven't talked about, and I know we were anyways, but let's bring it up now, is that Manny has taken over this defense.
Yep.
And when it comes to Manny, the personnel is certainly important, and the guys we just mentioned, but it is the style, the scheme, and the attitude. And I heard Manny say last week during a news conference out after practice, he said, one of the things we have said is we have to get back to the standard of defense that we are used to at the University of Miami. I know it sounds rah-rah cliche, but it's true. I mean, they have to play what is the standard of a Canes defense and a Manny Diaz-led defense. And I know some Canes fans may hear this and roll their eyes because they think Manny's not as good as advertised, and maybe his defenses don't play well. And look, there's a lot on Manny's plate this year and a lot of pressure on him, and it starts with defense. If that defense isn't good this year, the buck stops with Manny, because not only is he the head coach, he's the defensive coordinator. So he's the guy calling the plays, he's the guy running it. So they have to be better defensively, and I would expect they are, because if they're not, that's really does not look good for Manny Diaz.
And it's going to start in the defensive backfield. That secondary is going to be key. If they're healthy and ready to roll, I think it could be fantastic. Now, there were some bumps and bruises that kept some players out for spring practices, but leading tackler Bubba Bolden is back. He's a top 3, top 5 safety, arguably, who will be coming up in next year's draft. Amari Carter, he's going to play somewhere. Wherever Manny Diaz is going to stick him somewhere because he's an athlete.
Hopefully not with targeting. Hopefully not targeting.
He needs to clean up on that. Honestly, I like his aggressive play style, but
great.
You're in college. You need to be a little bit more disciplined. And if you want to catch eyes of scouts around the league, you need to be, disciplined. You need your technique, and you need to be really good at your fundamentals. Now, the corners, they're deep. You have a nice rotations. You're going to have seniors, juniors, maybe even freshmen play. Who knows? DJ Ivey is a great hitter, and he's been around for a while to be set on one side.
Yeah, he can play. Yeah.
And that position is strong enough, and transfers came in as well all across the country. But the key is to get everything started. It's going to be against the Roll Tide. Will that secondary live up to the test against a high-powered Alabama offense?
This is where I'm out of this. I'm not. Don't ask me about Alabama, because I'm constantly asked by Canes fans, and I always say the same thing. It's funny. The other day I was out to dinner with family, and I was walking by, and some guy said, "Hey, Will, please don't say anything bad about the Canes. My Canes, man, I said, look, man, it's not that I want to say anything bad about them. I actually think the Canes can be a 10-win team this year, and I think they will be a 10-win team this year. I really do. But one of those wins is not coming against Alabama. I mean, and that's okay to say. And I hate it to have a loser's mentality. And there might be some people who listen and say, that's a loser's mentality. Like, you're already thinking you're going to lose. It's not that. Alabama is a whole different animal. Alabama, what they have and what they do is just different. It's a standard that I know Manny talks about, the standard of defense and the University of Miami, but Alabama has its own standard. And it's really just Bama and Clemson. But if you really think about the scheme of it all, it really is just Bama. Because even programs like LSU, they win a national title, they come back the next year and they're terrible.
They're on and off.
The standard that Alabama has is just, it's not seen in college football. They are one and alone in that standard. And to face them off the bat, the chances, look, we could talk about X's and O's. We could talk about players on both sides. The reality is you just don't want to get embarrassed. If you can just hang around with Alabama and show some things, we talked about those playmakers, those guys on defense that you're hoping for. If you can just show something and have this be a game in the third, fourth quarter and not lose by 28 points, to me, that's a win. And I know it's a loser mentality. I get it. But when it comes to Alabama, it's just a different standard. It's a standard that Miami and, quite frankly, no one else in the country really is ready for.
So keep it within maybe 7 to 10 to 13 points. You're going to see them pull away in the fourth quarter. You always see Alabama do something crazy in the second half as well. But let's see, what happens. Maybe they shock people. I know Clay said it on the sports pod as well. He thinks they have potential. They might have a chance.
He thinks they have a chance. I don't think they have a chance. And look, I'm a homer. I love my Canes. It's my alma mater. Again, I think they're a 10-win team. I don't think they have any chance against Alabama. And by the way, I think that applies for about 99.99% of the teams in the country. So it's not like it's some crazy thing you're shooting down the Canes. They're just not ready for that. I'm not sure who is.
Hey, speaking of alma mater, my alma mater is a FIU, and I just got to put it out there, 30-24. Will, I got to put it out there. I got to brag.
Listen, man, but the only thing just boys about FIU is they got that big win, and they haven't been able to build off of it. Last year was the crazy COVID year. They went 0-5. They had 5 games. The last 3 games were all canceled. I mean, This year there's questions at quarterback. You know, I listened to all this stuff in their media. They got a really nice young running back.
Devonta Price. Devonta Price is good.
He's really good. He's actually one of the better running backs in the country. Hopefully he can play well, and they can win some games, because last year it sucked to see them take a step back. You kind of get a pass in the COVID year given everything that happened, but I hope your alma mater wins some games this year, man. They need to build off that momentum from a couple of years ago.
I hope so too. And then the starting safety, Dorian Hall, who was actually in my college algebra class, and I was talking to him too. He really thinks that, you know, they could have a shot at winning hopefully 5-6 games this year and clinch a bowl berth. So not to take the spotlight away from the Hurricanes, but you know, the little brother has to come up too.
They got their win in, man. They guys got to build off of that. They got to build off that.
That's it. So let's go ahead and talk offense and defense one more time. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest key for the Hurricanes on offense besides De'Aaron King?
Well, I mean, I think obviously the key is De'Aaron, and that's, you know, that goes without saying. But I think you want to find the playmaker. You want to find who are the guys that step up. What you would think that Harley and Mallory are the key targets. You know, is Rambo as a transfer going to be a guy that could be a consistent guy and give him options? You know, and I think that's something that a couple of years ago we saw KJ Osborne come in as a transfer and play really well. You know, can he have that type of impact where he can be one of the leading receivers right away? I mean, they certainly expect him to. That 3-headed monster on running back, the consistency there. But I think when it comes down to it, it's so cliche to say offensive line, because we could be having this discussion about the Dolphins, and we could be having it about just about any team.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, the offensive line has to be good. You know, if the offensive line is good and opens up holes, gives the Eric time, I think they can play with just about anybody except Alabama. You know, they could get, and when you look at their schedule and what they have.
So Clemson, maybe if they go to the championship game, can they play against Clemson or North Carolina?
You know, we saw what happened with Clemson and that matchup. But again, you know, that's Trevor Lawrence. That's a whole different thing. But I mean, that's just, again, that's a step below Bama probably, but not that far. The Canes just aren't there. To me, the Canes just have to get to that ACC title game, have that opportunity, be a 10-win team, play in a good bowl. You know, last year they were all geared toward that. We were talking about the Orange Bowl, and then it kind of all fell obviously down the stretch. This is the year to take that step. You've got De'Aaron King. You can't waste that opportunity.
So now, what is the biggest key for the Hurricanes on defense? I know we got shredded a lot against UNC, but you know, strangely enough, we were okay on third downs. But what's it going to take to stop those big plays from hurting us?
I mean, you just said it, big plays. I mean, you got to, you know, you want to get off the field on third down. That's important for any team. And again, that goes back to kind of a cliche thing, but it's true. You know, sometimes those frustrating 3rd and 8s that get converted for 9 yards that keep drives alive are the difference in games. But this team, if you're going to say the standard of Manny Diaz, well, what's the standard of Manny Diaz? I mean, we see it with the turnover chain. You got to create turnovers. You got to get sudden changes. You got to get points on defense. We didn't see that as much. And I know the turnover chain becomes kind of this thing of like, oh, you know, a lot of people don't like it. It's old news already. It's been around a few years. But guess what? The thought of the turnover chain and the thought of creating turnovers is what Manny Diaz's defense is about, which when he talks about the standard of defense, that means you have to create those turnovers. So Canes have to create turnovers, bottom line. They're the kind of defense, stay off the field, you know, on third downs, get off the field, don't let drives get extended. But at the same time, you got to make sudden changes, change field position, make plays, change games with your defense. And the way you do that is with turnovers.
I mean, you got to flip the field with special teams as well. Well, what's it going to look like with this special teams unit?
I mean, you got the best punter in the country, baby. He's not much younger than I am, I think, but he can kick it. You know, and your Borregales, and you got your young kicker. I mean, they seem, look, special teams wise, and what they could do. They have enough athletes, special teams wise. They should be good. You know, they should be good with production. They should be good with punt coverage. They should be good with punting itself. all those things. The Canes should be fundamentally a sound team. They really
Hope
should.
so.
They should. They have on all sides. When you look at the special teams, the offense, and the defense, it's not that there's no weaknesses. Of course there are, but there seems to be a nice balance. That's why I'm excited about this team. I hate that they start against Bama because if they go out and lose 48, 14, people are going to be like, these same old Canes, they're no good. I don't think that'll be a true representation of what they can be.
So the biggest question will be, when will the U be back? But let's go ahead and let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. We're headed over to Miami Gardens, brand new practice facility right next to the stadium.
I'm going to hold you for 1 second. I'm literally going to do a dad thing because I'm a dad in the middle of a pod. I have to move something over. Give me 5 seconds.
No worries, man. No worries. Well, everybody, this is Manso showing everybody he's a dad now. I mean, look at his hair. He's gray. He's got gray hair now. Well, I got a little bit of gray hairs too, but it's stress. This is Will's old age.
There you go. I had to move something over. When it comes to kids, they don't wait for podcasts.
Well, I don't have any kids yet. Maybe in the next 5-10 years, we'll see. We'll see what happens, Will. But I mean, it wasn't that long ago when you were my age, starting off in this industry too. You didn't have kids to worry about either.
It seems like a long time ago. The gray definitely starts showing up after a few years.
But yeah, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. I mean, great practice facility. When you went to look at the practices, I mean, it's brand new. But how is this offense looking in your opinion?
Well, I was out there yesterday. I went out to wrap up the joint practices and do live shots in the early news. And first of all, the facility is incredible. I mean, it's first class all the way. I mean, it's so funny because it's so new that there are still like doors that the handles don't open right, or you got to peel off like stickers. It's like it's real.
Did you ride the slide? Did you ride the slide?
I did ride the slide. I rode the slide during the tour, which was pretty fun. But it's a great facility, and that I know that isn't all that makes a team, but it's important to have that at your disposal. Guys have no excuses. You have the best facility, one of them in the NFL. I mean, others may say they had better ones, but very few, put it that way. On one hand, you can count how many are in the level of what the Dolphins have done. And when you talk about their offense, that's why I joked earlier about offensive line. I mean, that's where it starts because there are concerns at running back. Look, I'm not sure if the combination, we talk about the three-headed monster at I'm not sure if Malcolm Brown and Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed are that level of, like you have that faith where I had the faith in the young guys at that they can produce. I don't know, because in the order, I really like Myles Gaskin a lot. I like what he did last year. But can he do it again? Can he replicate the ability out of the backfield and do that? Can he get in holes from this offensive line? Is Malcolm Brown going to be the short yardage guy? Is Salvin Ahmed going to kind of be that balance of both when needed? That's going to fall a lot on the O-line. And whenever you talk about Miami's offense, obviously you're going to talk about Tua. I think this in conversations we've had and following each other on Twitter and stuff, that I'm a huge Tua fan. I am. I liked him before the draft. I wanted the Dolphins to draft him. I was ecstatic as a fan that they drafted him, but also as a media member to see and know that I can cover a guy that I think can be a really special player in the NFL. And I think he can be. Year two and his progression is going to be vital. They've gotten him weapons, that's for sure. I know we haven't seen a lot of them in camp, but on paper, in drafting Jalen Waddle and going out and making a move to get Will Fuller, and you still have Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, Albert Wilson coming back, Mike Gesicki's developing a really, really nice tight end. On paper, they've got the weapons to be a very, very good offense.
And that's the big key right there. On paper, they have to be healthy. They have to perform. That offensive line is the biggest question mark, especially on the left side with Austin Jackson and Solomon Kinley. Look, we don't even know where Liam Eichenberg will start week one. We know how hush-hush this offense organization has been the past couple of years. They don't let anything leak out unless they want it to leak out. So we're going to see what happens with Liam Eichenberg. We're going to see what happens against the first preseason game against Atlanta. But, man, I heard Omar Kelly and Travis Wingfield talk about how they improved from last week against the Chicago Bears, but there have been some misses. There's some miscommunications, misreps. They're not doing the fundamentals properly. But is it too early, or should we be a bit cautious and worried right now?
I mean, first of all, the conversation those guys were having is a legitimate conversation. There has been some improvement from everything I've seen and heard, but here's the problem. What those three guys that you just mentioned on the line, right? What do they have in common? What do they have? They're all young.
They're all young.
Either rookies in Eichenberg or second-year players in Jackson and Kinley. And you're talking about young players. And with young players, more often than not, even in the NFL, even being the best in the world, you're going to have your ups and downs. And especially when you're talking about the shuffling going on, Kinley in the position and where he's going to play. Obviously, Eichenberg has been in two spots. Where is he going to play? Jackson trying to get comfortable on the tackle. I mean, those are all things that are, quite frankly, they're things you learn on the job. And when you learn on the job, sometimes you struggle. And what's frustrating for me, and it's hard because I don't mind the learning on the job stuff. I think that's good. I think it's part of the growth of an NFL player. What could end up being frustrating from this team and what worries me a bit, and I think maybe you agree with me on this, and I think a lot of Dolphin fans will agree with me on this. I think the Dolphins are good. I think the Dolphins can be a playoff team. And maybe in past years, you didn't mind hey, man, we'll take our growing pains in this spot and this spot because, if we win 9 games, 10 games, show some growth, that'd be a great step forward. I don't think that's acceptable for this team. I think this team can win 10, 11 games. I think this team can be a playoff team. I think this team can go in the playoffs and win a game. I mean, I really do with the defense they have and the weapons they have. And so much of it will fall on an offensive line that's trying to come together, that has a lot of moving pieces and a lot of young guys. And if that ends up being the downfall of a team that, to me, the window is open now. You always have that cliche of windows, right? Well, the Dolphins' window is now. Doesn't mean it's just this year, but whatever the window is, whether it's 4, 5, 6 years, whatever that
Be
window
next
is,
year, the year after, whatever.
The window has opened. And in the NFL, man, you want to take advantage of every year you have an open window because you never know when there'll be an injury. You'll never know when a team struggles and you get a chance to win a division and host a home playoff game and things happen. And that's what worries me a bit about this offensive line, that it could be the one spot that leads to issues for the Dolphins.
And I think so too. I agree as well. But, there's going to be growing pains. These guys are in their second year. And a thing I've noticed is that when you have constant turnover on the coaching staff, you're learning new offensive concepts. Now, on the offensive line, you really only have 3 concepts. You have power, you have zone scheme, and you have one more. I forgot, but there's one more. I'm just blanking on it right now. And the Dolphins' offensive playbook consists of all 3 of them. You have Studesville, who brings, that power running game from Denver. You have George Godsey, who brings that power running game from Tennessee, and the West Coast zone-based concepts from Houston and New England as well. Along the offensive line, you have guys with different skill sets, and their skill sets can only be used on one type of concept. With Solomon Kinley, he's a power guy. At Georgia, I mean, all they did was run power plays.
He's a mauler. Yeah.
He's a mauler. He's a great run blocker, but he can't pass protect for his life. Austin Jackson, he played in the Pac-12, and Pac-12, you don't really play against really, really good defenses, and you play that West Coast zone type of scheme. So he's okay with that. He's decent in run blocking. He's okay in pass blocking as well, but, he's had a little bit of his hiccups as well. So I do think, the variety of schemes, it's good and bad for those players. And it's a developmental curve as well. They're only in year 2 as well. But if they show linear improvement year after year after year, we might have something.
Oh, I think so.
How long will it take? That's the question.
I give the Dolphins credit. They've addressed. It's not like they haven't. Sometimes you see offensive lines that they're getting patched together with veteran free agents and guys that are cast off from another team. Dolphins are investing good draft capital and trying to fix the offensive line and get a productive offensive line. And look, we could be having a discussion by next year and saying these guys came together and they have a really nice young offensive line going toward the future. And I think I'm still on the side that I think that's where they're headed. I have faith. I believe that Austin Jackson has the raw ability to be better. And I don't think he's been as bad as some people want to say. Look, he's got issues, and he obviously showed some of that there are some things he has to work on, but I think it's all correctable, and I think he's showing signs of wanting and learning to correct it. Kinley, again, there's things about him, limitations of the game, but he's a big dude who's got a lot of experience. Eichenberg, we're going to see. He's a guy that when you look at his college production and his ability, it's excellent. And what he was able to do, and the Dolphins like his versatility, but he's about to play his first NFL game ever. So how are we to judge what he really can be just yet, other than what we've seen in the past and what we've read from camp and seen from camp? So those are all question marks that you hope to look. Another thing with Tua that he talks about a lot and that will help this offensive line a lot is they want to get the ball out quickly.
Yep.
This is not a long progressing offense, drop back, look through 4 or 5 reads. I mean, they want to get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly, and that's
why you have those speed guys. You got guys like Jalen Waddle, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, Robert Foster.
That's not a product of not having faith in your offensive line. That's a product of that's the way they want this offense to be. So that gives some leeway to the offensive line. That maybe you don't have to hold your blocks as much. You just do your job, get your assignment, get your guy blocked for a couple seconds, and let Tua get the ball out of there. And find those speed guys. That gives me a little bit more hope and that this could work out, because again, I love what the Dolphins have done offensively with weapons for Tua, and I think in year 2, Tua is going to be phenomenal.
So now let's go ahead and switch it out to the defense. And the defense, they look like they're back to midseason form already. Mm-hmm. And Xavier Howard and Byron Jones aren't really playing that much. They're proven veterans. Devin McCourty isn't playing either, but Javon Holland is really coming up in camp.
Javon Holland's impressive, man. He has. Okay, I'll tell you about Javon Holland real quick. So when Javon Holland got drafted, the first thing I said, because we were live tweeting and talking to people, and I said, I honestly don't know much about Javon Holland. I've read his name. I've seen his stats. I heard about him as a player, but I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you that I know a lot about Javon Holland. He's not a guy that I saw play a lot. He didn't go to a program at a school that I really saw a lot, but man, when you start to watch Javon Holland, holy God, he's impressive. He's always around the football. And then you see what he's done in camp and you read the reports of what, interception here, interception there, pass breakup there. He's just like a heat-seeking missile. I may have not known much about Javon Holland when he got drafted, but I sure as heck know about him now. I think Dolphin fans should do the same and get to know him, because he's going to be a really productive player. And I think that starts as a rookie.
And, we were talking to Clay right after he got drafted, and he was on our live stream. And I told Clay, listen, I'm not so sure what the Dolphins did in drafting Javon Holland, because he was my number 2 rated safety. My number 1 rated safety was Trevon Moehrig coming out of TCU. And we heard the reports, pre-draft that Miami was looking for, a center field safety, kind of like a Minkah Fitzpatrick type of player. Well, boy, I was wrong. I mean, I'm going to admit it. I was dead wrong. When I looked at Javon Holland's film, I saw him as a slot corner. I saw him as a guy who would be around the line of scrimmage, sometimes deep as well. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, what are the Dolphins trying to do in the secondary that I'm not seeing? And this goes to Brian Flores as a coach, as a teacher, as a guy who knows everything in his head. He knows what he's talking about. And look, when Minkah Fitzpatrick left, that left a big hole at safety. Within 2 years, they filled that hole already.
Well, and they filled it with a guy who plays to their style that they want. You
exactly.
All day for what
exactly
what happened. I get it. People look at Minkah, and he's such a productive player, one of the better safeties in the league. But he didn't fit what they wanted. He wasn't into what they wanted. Javon Holland's a perfect fit for what they want. And it's a lot of pressure on a kid to say he's going to be Minkah Fitzpatrick or that type of impact player. He hasn't stepped in an NFL field yet in a regular season game. But they really like what he can bring, and they feel he fits their style more. Because when you look back at the Minkah Fitzpatrick situation, it wasn't a matter of they thought he wasn't talented. Of course they know Minkah Fitzpatrick is talented. That's why they were able to trade him and get good return.
He couldn't do what they wanted him to do.
Or he didn't want to do what they wanted him to do. It
exactly.
wasn't fit for what they wanted, both sides. And you move on, and you wish it could have worked, but the Dolphins, as you said, within a couple of years have gotten a playmaker that they feel can be the guy that they want. You hope as a Dolphin fan that he can be.
And I really, really hope, he becomes that next great safety for the Miami Dolphins. We had it in Rashad Jones. Bobby McCain was good. Yeah. He was decent, but it's Javon Holland's time now. On the defensive line, you got a monster in Jalen Phillips, okay? And I know the coaching staff and training staff, they're bringing him on slowly. They know his injury history. They know his history with concussions, his lower leg, his wrist. He's a physical guy. He's a physical player. Being that young, being that large, and being that dominant, You already know what you got with him physically, but it's about the mental game.
Mhm.
How do you see Jalen Phillips's progress in the mental game his first season in the NFL?
I mean, well, he just talked about a couple days ago out of camp, and he was, first of all, he's raring to go. He's dying to get out there. I mean, he's missed some time, and they've been very careful with him and not rushing him back. But Jalen is I don't even know how to describe a guy like him. He's a constant motion, energy. I mean, he is just a ball of constant energy and strength, and he's a disruptor. That's what he wants to do. He wants to disrupt every play that he's on the field. And that's what the Dolphins got him. That's what the Dolphins took him. That's why they selected him so high, because they feel he can be that kind of disruptive player on the edge. Health is obviously important. Look, that goes for every guy, but given his injury history, as you mentioned, sure, that's very important. But from a fit to what Brian Flores wants from his defense and from an energy perspective, Jalen Phillips mentally is all there. I mean, this guy loves football. And I think that's what gets lost sometimes in Jalen's past, is that people tend to think that a player, if he so-called quits or leaves the game, is because he doesn't love the game. Jalen loves football. It was just getting taken away from him because of all the injuries and issues he was having, and that put him in a tough place. Now that he is back and healthy and knows how to handle his body and the proper training, and you've seen Jalen, look, I mean, the guy's a physical freak. He looks like a Greek god without his shirt off. I mean, he's in great shape, strong, fast. He is ready to have a big season. But I would temper the expectations a bit. Very hard for an edge to just come into the league and be a dominant player. He's got help along that line with veteran guys. And, we saw what Ogba did last year. And this is a unit that doesn't necessarily need him off the bat. He doesn't need to be a 15-sack guy. It'd be great, obviously. But that's not what you expect. He needs to be a guy that can disrupt. And as the season goes on, maybe be that more of a, consistent pass rusher and be a guy down the stretch that by the end of the year, you're looking at just a guy who is a productive kind of up and coming force.
Exactly. And you see him on third down, third and short, third and long. You see him line up, you're going to poop your pants. You see him there. You see Christian Wilkins. You see Raekwon Davis. You see Emmanuel Ogba. You see Andrew Van Ginkel. You're like, oh crap, what am I going to do?
You just mentioned it's a big front. And Wilkins, I think sometimes we take for granted that Wilkins is still a young guy, still getting better, and was a first-round pick just a few years ago, but he's got room to grow, and he has grown already, and he's only going to keep getting better, in my opinion. I don't think we've seen the player Christian Wilkins can be. I think there's more there to see, and that's exciting. When you have a guy like Ogba, who last year turned out to be so damn good, and Raekwon, who's such a big dude, I mean, that's a lot of talent, size, and strength, speed, disruptiveness in that front before you even get to that 1-2 punch at corner that's the best in the NFL.
So we have to talk about the Atlanta Falcons since we'll be playing them Saturday night at The Rock. What did you see from Kyle Pitts that you liked and you didn't like from him?
I mean, there's not much to not like. I mean, he's a physical freak. He's big. He's a genuine mismatch, pretty much with anybody who's going to line up against him. But again, like, you temper expectations for a young guy. There is a learning curve, and I don't think Kyle Pitts is going to come in and catch 90 balls for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's the player he's going to eventually turn into. But I don't think that's something you're going to see right off the bat. There's going to be things that he has to learn, that it's not just this is something you learn as a young player, that you see is that everybody in the NFL is big. Everybody in the NFL is fast and strong, and they are the best of what they were in college. And now you put it together. There's no weak links. And that's why when somebody says, like, oh, this guy stinks, like, that guy doesn't stink.
In one year.
The best players in the world. When you see certain guys, these are the best players in the world at doing the best, and that challenge that he'll have every game and every play is something that's a growing curve. But from a talent perspective, Kyle Pitts has everything to be a dominant, one of the best tight ends. And you say tight ends, but one of the best receivers in the league. I mean, he's going to be, if he stays healthy, a guy that's going to be top 7, 8 in the league in receptions every year and touchdowns every year, because he's that type of force, short right out the line of scrimmage to make quick plays and to turn something into a huge play in the red zone and score touchdowns.
So before we wrap up, what do you want to see from the Dolphins against the Falcons in the second preseason game?
Well, Brian Flores this week didn't detail how long guys were going to play, but I have a feeling that this is going to be like preseason game number 3 most years, the game that your starters play till the half. I could be wrong. I could absolutely be wrong because this is a unique year with only 3 preseason games. And then you've got the break between the regular season, the 1 week. So coaches are all going to have kind of different things on their mind. You've seen starters not even play week 1, in some teams like quarterbacks. Brian Flores decided to play Tua for an entire quarter. I would guess that the starters play for a half, and what you would want is Tua to finish drives.
Yeah.
And the other day you had the drive that got stalled and settled for the field goal, and then you had the great drive that you had the interception in the end zone. What you would hope from an offensive perspective is finish the drive with Tua leading the way in the red zone, score a touchdown, make big plays, find a way to finish drives. I think the offense looked pretty darn good, and Tua looked very good outside of that interception. And unfortunately, in close NFL games, one interception can do you in between the difference in a win and a loss. So that's what you want to see. On defense, just do what you did last week. Jeez. I mean, if you play like that, they were just incredible. It's funny that the story of last week became Justin Fields, who looked so good in the second half. But people forget that in the first half, the Dolphins defense was absolutely dominant.
Yep.
And they didn't even have their key guys out there. Most of their key guys out there. You didn't see those guys. So, continue to show that ability to just get opposing offenses off the field 3 and out as they did the other day. That's what you would hope to see over the course of a first half.
Well, it's really going to be intriguing to see how the Dolphins, the first team, hopefully if they do play the entire first half, how they do, if the defense can continue their dominance, and if punter Michael Pilardi keeps booming those big, beautiful, amazing punts that you see in practice. I mean, his punts are a thing of beauty. Like I've never seen something like that.
What about the punt return team? I mean, that.
Oh my God!
Grant's a hell of a 1-2 punch. Those guys made some plays the other day.
It is, and after that second preseason game, we're going to see a couple of cuts, maybe some big names, maybe some surprising names as well. But we'll see what's going to happen. But Will, before you go, let the audience know where they can find you at.
You can always watch me on Channel 10, Local 10 WPLG, if you live in South Florida. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I have 2 Twitter accounts. One is my personal, where I give dumb takes and we chat sports, as at Will Manso. And then my work one is at Will Manso WPLG. That's where I link videos and stories to my work. So that's a little bit more, professional. And the other one is just me being an idiot and just joking around and having some fun, being a fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss being in South Florida, man. When work moved me out to Orlando, I was sort of bummed out where, I'm gonna miss all the local sports coverage here, and I really miss seeing all you guys on TV. So there's my love to you guys.
It is. I tell people all the time, local sports, and when I say sports, I mean not just TV, newspapers and all the different outlets that there are, podcasts. That's where you really, as a fan, get your information. Because if you watch national sports, the only thing you're going to hear is people saying, is Tua going to be a bust? And debating that for an hour, Where locally, you got guys, and men and women, and like I said, podcasts, newspaper, television. We talk about the ins and outs because in the end, we all want to see the Dolphins do well, want to see the Canes do well, and hope to cover a winner. So that's what it comes down to.
And we hope to see the Marlins and the Heat and the Panthers do well. And then Inter Miami, hopefully they can get something going in the next season or so.
No, they played better the last 5-6 games they've played. They've won 3 of them. They've played well in a couple of them. So let's see if they keep going.
Of course. Well, Will, thank you for coming on to the Scouting Combine here. I love talking Canes and Dolphins with you. Always a pleasure having you on. Make sure to follow us at PhinManiacs on Twitter. Make sure to follow me at Hussam Patel. My ad is outlined there. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, subscribe, give us 5 stars, give us great ratings as well. Well, as always, guys, thank you for listening, and fins up, everybody.